Metes and bounds. Legal property description using landmarks and distances. Metes means distances, and bounds means direction, as defined by angles using degrees, minutes, and seconds. If you think back to your geometry class in high school, going a certain direction for a set distance, and then turning to another direction as defined by an angle, and continuing in this manner, eventually arriving back at the starting point, defines an area. This is the oldest and therefore most common surveying method used to define property in America. Metes and bounds is the common way to legally describe property using distances and angles. Estate in remainder. Life estate. Upon death of a person, property goes to a third party. The word estate means an ownership interest or claim a person has in real property. There are two main types of estates. Freehold estates are owned, and less than freehold estates are rented or leased. Freehold estates, those owned, fall into two types: life estates and estates in fee. Life estates are estates that are based on the life of a person, and there are four types: estate in reversion, reserving a life estate, pour atre vae, and an estate in remainder. An estate in remainder is a life estate where upon the death of a specific person, the property goes to a third party. The estate the third party holds is called the estate in remainder. Related words: estate in reversion, reserving a life estate, pour atre vae. Corporeal property versus incorporeal property. Owned property versus easements or right-of-way. Corporeal property is property that is possessed or owned. Incorporeal property is property that is not in possession, like an easement or a right-of-way. Time is of the essence. Contract clause emphasizing time limits of the offer. When this phrase, quote, "time is of the essence," end quote, is used in a contract, it means that the matters of the contract need to be dealt with right away, or at the very least, within the time limits specified in the contract. Any kind of delay by either party starts to make the contract or offer of a contract void, either in actuality or in spirit. The contract will become void in actuality if the time-specified issues stated in the contract are violated. For example, if a purchase contract states financing will be in place in 20 days from the time of acceptance of the offer, and it is not, then the offer becomes void, or at least is voidable by the party who specified the time limit, which is probably the seller. Time is of the essence is a contract clause emphasizing time limits of the offer. Front ratio. Percent gross income used to pay housing expense. The front ratio is the percent of monthly gross income used to pay one's housing expense. If a person's gross income is $3,000 a month, and $1,000 is paid for housing, either rent or mortgage, it doesn't matter, per month, then the front ratio is 1,000 divided by 3,000, which is 0.3333 or 33%. Many loan companies look at this measure when considering whether or not to lend. High front ratios indicate danger levels for finances. 33% is a typical front ratio, and 50% is a warning level for many lenders. The front ratio is the percent of monthly gross income used to pay housing expenses. Related words: back ratio. Real Estate Investment Trusts, REIT. Pooled investor funds in real estate. A real estate investment trust, REIT, sells shares of the overall company to raise money to purchase real estate as an investment. While a single person probably can't buy a shopping center, through purchasing shares of a REIT, REIT, which invest in shopping centers, a person can own a little slice of a shopping center. A real estate investment trust is often traded on a public stock exchange. A REIT is required to file with the Securities and Exchange Commission if publicly traded. A REIT is a company which pools investor funds to invest in real estate. Caveat emptor. Latin for, quote, buyer beware, end quote, means buyer must investigate. Caveat emptor is the historical perspective that the burden of investigating the legitimacy of a transaction falls on the buyer. In our modern consumer-driven economy, there have been many steps taken to increasingly hold the seller responsible for deals gone bad, but the principle still holds largely true. Many modern inventions, like title insurance, the process of escrow, or the common practice of filing real estate paperwork with the county clerk recorder office, work to make transactions more safe and reliable for all involved. A trustworthy system is what allows an economy to grow and flourish. Nonetheless, the phrase caveat emptor means buyer beware and represents the burden of investigating the legitimacy of a transaction falling on the buyer. Grant deed. Warranty of encumbered single conveyance. Deeds are used to transfer real property from one person to, or entity to another. There are different types of deeds. The grant deed is one of the most used. A grant deed is more about assurances of the transfer. A grant deed carries with it the promise and warranty that the property has not been previously transferred to someone else. It is not encumbered, does not have restrictions on the transfer unless otherwise noted, and that the title transfer will be completed as promised. Because a person's word is not enough, we use title insurance to check and back up the warranties of a grant deed. Lawful object or lawful objective. Something legal. A valid contract requires legally competent parties, mutual consent, a lawful object, and acceptable consideration. A lawful object or lawful objective is something that is legal. For example, making a contract to buy a stolen car is not a contract at all, as it is illegal to sell a stolen car. Likewise, illegal drug dealers cannot go to court when one breaks a contract because a contract regarding illegal drugs is not valid for the reasons that a legal object is required to have a contract in the first place. If one person sells the other the Golden Gate Bridge, the contract is not valid as the person does not own that bridge. There is no legal object, so there is not a contract. A lawful object or lawful objective is something that is legal. Adverse possession. Acquiring title through open possession and paying taxes. Adverse possession is the concept that the title to property can be acquired through continued possession and payment of property taxes for 5 or more years. Possession must be actual, adverse, notorious, and continuous for 5 or more years, hostile to the present owner's title and wishes, and open during which time the property taxes are paid by the adverse possessor. In other words, if a current property owner is willing to let all this happen for this long, then the current owner is letting someone else have his property through adverse possession. Related words: easement by prescription.